The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. So what I'd like to talk about today is the Sangha living in harmony. I thought there's less of us here. This is really this great opportunity to all work together. We're having people kindly come, the lay Sangha kindly come and help us. So we all can, hopefully as usual, work together and live in harmony. And living in harmony, when it comes down to it, is basically getting along with each other. It's not some sanctified, rare quality that you float on clouds, and it's basically you're in everyday life with other people, and you're living in harmony with them. Working things out, respecting each other, caring about each other. And I want to make it clear from the very beginning of this talk that I don't think there's some great discord in our Sangha, so that's not why I'm talking about this. I just ran across the teaching of the Buddha talking about harmony, which I'll read a bit of at the end of the talk, and I thought, oh, this is a good topic to talk about. And, in fact, I think we get along pretty well with each other. Before the Sunday Dharma talks, actually before the ceremony even, you all come in the hall, and there's a certain noise level, which is really actually, I find quite sweet and lovely, in the sense that you've got these people who maybe haven't seen each other in a week or a few days, and they're just talking with each other, having a good time, laughing. It's the same thing before the Dharma talk. And of course, when the monk comes out of the vestry there to come up to do the talk, people don't continue talking. They're quiet. So, anyway, I think to me, it's a good sign that people, when they talk and laugh with each other and are happy to see each other and express that, that's good. Okay. So, as we know, we all know, living this human life, that living in harmony takes a real daily effort. It's the rare person, if there is an even one, who's just harmonious with everybody and just naturally and, just shines in that way. I don't think so. It's about the daily living with each other and working it out. And living in harmony with others is work. Although sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard, a lot of times it's just in the middle, and sometimes, rather than doing an action to further harmony, because harmony is not all about us doing things to make it better between us and other people. Actually, what we need to do is to get ourselves out of the way. Okay? And in a sense, a non-action, a restraint. Okay? So that's a big part of harmony. And as we know, it's very easy to get along with those we like, feel an affinity towards, share common interests with, or naturally respect. That's easy. It's wonderful. But of course, it's not universal, probably. Okay? As we know, the Sangha is very diverse, with different people, with sometimes different views, different opinions, different life experience, and different ways of doing things. Personally, I think that it's a big plus that this diversity. Okay, I think because of the diversity, we can learn a lot from each other. Okay, we can broaden our perspective because of our differences. There's nothing like differences, and then sincerely looking into it, that broadens us. Okay? So, in the monastic community here. you don't get to choose who you train with. I mean, you come here by yourself. Obviously, you probably came here because you were attracted to this monastic Sangha somewhat. Okay? But you don't get to choose who you get to sit with in the meditation hall, and sometimes who you sleep next to, or who you eat next to. Because a lot of that's by seniority. Okay? And you didn't pick these people, ahead of you, behind you. They just came, thankfully. Right? And I mean all this, I think this is all a positive. It's kind of actually challenging, but good to be in a situation where you haven't handpicked it. It's just people who have a common interest, okay, really share something in common, that unites them and lifts them. Years ago, we saw this television, I guess a documentary on these cloistered Catholic nuns. Okay, and the interviewer approached this nun who was in her 80s, okay, and asked her, was there anything that she still found difficult in her life as a monastic? And she said, yeah, getting up at 4 a.m. Okay. I still find getting up early in the morning challenging, and I also find getting along with people challenging. It's not like it's got super easier. I think it's got better, but it's challenging. Okay? So in life, we all have some days when things don't flow easily. Everybody has that. Even the so-called saints, I think, have that. We all have days when we're tired, maybe a little sensitive, and sometimes maybe even a little crabby. Okay. Maybe we didn't sleep well, or we're worried about something, with good reason we're worried about something. Or we're sad because something happened. And these things affect us. Training doesn't insulate you from those things. But what it allows you to do is to put them in perspective and then be able to see what's right in front of you more clearly. So I'll just tell you a little story about me. When I was a head cook here, I'd really be tired in the morning sometimes. I mean, it was mostly my own doing, but I was tired. And you'd get up to the kitchen right after morning service, and then this horde of people, very cheerful people, come into the kitchen. And you're like, I want to run somewhere quiet, where I can be alone, and slowly move into the day. Because if you're the cook, I think it's probably the same for cooks in the world, you got to get on with it. From the moment you get in there, you get on with it. Okay? You don't have to speed, but you have to. There has to be a vigor about your training. So after a bit of suffering through this, it dawned on me: why not join in the cheerfulness and greet the kind people who come to help with a heartfelt good morning? Very simple. Just say good morning, people. It lightens the load. Okay, and there's not this. You're not trying to flee out the door to the great quiet space, which I'm not sure where those are. Okay. Also, I learned over time as a head cook to watch myself when I was feeling the scrunch of pulling the meal together. Okay. So when you're cooking for a number of people, and there were a few more of us in the monastic community in those days, so it may be daily a meal for 60 people. That's just what it was. I also had more help, I think, particularly monastic help, because there were more people in the monastic community. So it's all kind of equal. But there's that last 45 minutes to an hour before the meal, okay? And you start to feel this pressure. At least I did. Because you've got to pull it together. All these things, you got to get the casserole together, all the little bits. You got to make sure the salad's done. If you're, dividing the food, you got to think in terms of that. So there's these pressures, or let's say maybe perceived pressures. So I found myself for a while running around like a mad person, trying to get everybody to go faster. Disastrous. Really, it's disastrous. Because people can only go so fast. And fast isn't a mark of anything, neither is slow. So then I kind of rethought the matter. And I thought, well, that's not working. Why don't I just, when I get to that point, really try to focus my mind and my body on the working meditation that's right in front of me. Because maybe the carrots needed chopping. So I just would chop the carrots. And I kept bringing my mind back as I tried to get into all the... You still have to be organized, but you don't have to be driven. Okay? And it helped. I mean, sometimes, quite honestly, the whole thing felt like a miracle in the end when I got it out, because I kept having this thought: this is impossible, this is impossible, this is impossible. But those were all self-induced pressures. Okay? Maybe you don't have those. Yeah. Oh, one more. I can't resist this one. So, and I don't know that all people who cook have this, but I became very cautious when I had the thought, oh, this is just a simple meal, because it would get away from you. You'd be focusing so much on the simple that the details of the meal weren't coming together. You relaxed too much into the simple. So anyway, I learned that a simple meal could actually get very complicated or very, very time pressured. So just be careful, And so I mean, that for me, that was just a bit of a caution to just do steady training. Just don't kind of float for a while. Just do steady practice. Okay, so back to getting along. Reverend Master Jiyu used to use the analogy of training. And that's training in the monastery, particularly, but also training in general. People are doing Buddhist training. She used the analogy of a rock tumbler. Okay, and she said, because actually we were tumbling rocks at that point in time. We were making things, out of what would be nice stones. And she said, in a rock tumbler, which goes around, around and around. There's rocks thrown in it, and it goes around and around. And there's some grit thrown in there, because that helps helps the things abrade. Okay? And of course, the rocks hitting each other, they help to beautify each other, because rocks cannot look like anything, and they can have some really rough edges. Just remind us of us. We cannot look like anything, and we've got some rough edges. But you put the rocks in the tumbler and you let them tumble, and it takes time. It's not a 15-minute tumble. It's a long period of time, I think. And what happens is the rocks polish each other, okay, and the grit helps. Well, the grit is the training, okay, is the Buddhist training that we've been handed down through Reverend Master Jiyu, through all the great teachers in our line, and back to Shakyamuni Buddha. But really, this is an analogy about training together, okay, and the value of entering the tumbler and not getting out too soon. Just tumbling with everyone else. Because in fact, everyone else is tumbling too. We can often think, oh, so-and-so, they got it so easy, they got it all together. I don't know, sometimes people that I've thought had it all together in their life, then something horrid, happens. Years ago, there was this person that I really idolized, because I thought he did a lot for social justice. Well, he ended up killing himself, and I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I thought, maybe he didn't have it all together, or maybe he hit a real rough spot, and so in time we polish each other. Okay, if you just put one rock in the rock tumbler, and you can throw in a hell of a lot of grit, it's not going to do much. It needs the rocks. It needs the rocks to polish each other. So maybe the analogy there is if we, train solely on our own, well, it might be peaceful and quiet for a while. But the question is, how much progress are we making with the Mahayana vow of living in harmony as well as harmonizing the general multitudes? It's a question. I don't know. Maybe somebody does, but I like this method. Okay. Yeah. So we all have to do our own training. We know that. No one can do it for us. That tumbling of rocks isn't the other rock doing the training for the other rock. It's just they abrade and help each other and polish each other, help in that process. Actually the word monk from the Greek, I never studied Greek, studied Latin. But anyway, the word from the Greek translates as one who lives alone. We had a Catholic monk who brought up a whole bunch of novices from Vina, down in the valley. I think it's a Cistercian or Trappist monastery. But anyway, he found it really interesting that we called all ourselves monks, because even in Buddhism, sometimes there's monks and nuns. But he said actually the word monk means one who lives alone. It's not referring to gender. It's one who lives alone. So there's this element of, we have to do this training inside and outside with ourselves. Or however we want to do this, from the time of the Buddha, monks and lay practitioners have come together and practiced as a community. It goes way back from the time of the Buddha. I mean, it's very traditional in religions, but in Buddhism particularly, you go through the Pali Canon, and the Buddha's he's with people a lot. I'm sure he took time for a private retreat, but he's always, talking to people and answering questions and also approaching it in a way that is accessible for people who are doing different things. Okay? And as we know, the Sangha is the third of the three refuges, so there must be a key there. Sangha, refuge, must be something in that Sangha that it's a refuge. And the Sangha is one of the triple gems or treasures. I mean, highly prized, this living in community, this helping each other. So as I said earlier, harmony is easy when it flows along as it sometimes does nicely. It's wonderful when you have those days when things are just flowing along. Okay? And it's hard work when things are bumpy and difficult, because they are sometimes. Not necessarily our fault. It's difficult. Okay? But easy and difficult are just actually two moments in time. And fortunately, things are always changing. This is the basic impermanence that we talk about in Buddhism. Okay? What's always amazed me about human beings is that they have the capacity to change. And I'm talking particularly here from something that isn't so good, not peaceful making with other people, not with themselves, to somebody who arrives at a peace and a harmony with other people. You see it, and you see it, some people make drastic changes in their lives. Now you can go the other way, too, if you want. You got to do the training. It isn't like you get the one and you glide, You have to do the training. But there is this capacity to change. So a grouchy person, with time and training, can become kind and compassionate. So we want to not think of them always as a grouchy person. People can change. A miserly person can become generous. A seeming enemy can become a good friend. Okay, people who come to Buddhist training, at least this has been my observation, generally tend to be on the sensitive to oversensitive side. Okay, there's nothing wrong with being sensitive. It's a good quality. We just have to be careful of mixing sensitivity with the self. Okay, especially if the self is hurt or put out. Just that's a mix that, it can take us to the way oversensitive, and I don't think it serves us best. Yeah, and I know that there are sometimes, say, potentially violent situations. Well, if you can, I'd extricate yourself fast as you can. It isn't a question of just, enduring whatever abuse. We're not doormats. Master G would say that. Okay? But we don't have to fling our doormat after everybody else or hit them over the head because they feel they stamped on our doormat. Okay? Yeah, we have to be careful of getting bogged down in self-hurt and seeing past situations in the present. Okay, because we can do that. And, it's not all bad seeing past situations in the present. I mean, there might be flags that are going up, but we just want to be careful with that one because sometimes we can kind of cloud what's actually there. There's just no doubt that ongoing practice together with others helps us become more skillful in human interaction. Very hard field, human interaction, But if we stick it out, we become more skillful. We don't become perfect, we become more skillful. Basically, we see what doesn't lead to harmony, and we see what helps. And if we want to move away from suffering, we'll go to the things that help. Sometimes, no matter what we seemingly try to do, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Okay. I mean, at least the situation doesn't seem to be getting better. But is it possible, I'm going to throw out this question, that we are expecting something in return? Or thinking that we can change others, that it's our job, change others. I think the best way we influence others maybe is by our own example of how we live. That's to me, that's the greatest teacher. People who walk the walk, walk the talk. Okay. So when I come across something, one more page here, like this, question of harmony in the Sangha, I like to go back to the teachings of the Buddha. He's our great teacher. He was a very wise person. And I went and I looked in the middle-length discourses of the Buddha. Okay? And there's a section in there called Patience Under Provocation. Okay? I'm not sure I exactly knew what provocation was when I heard the word, but it's a cause for resentment or irritation. That's what the dictionary says. Okay? So let me just read this paragraph. And the Buddha in this particular teaching was talking to the monks, but I think it's a universal teaching, universal advice. Okay? It's probably that the monks asked him the question. That was the audience that was in front of him. So he says, "Monks, there are these 5 courses of speech that others may use when they address you. Their speech may be timely or untimely, true or untrue, gentle or harsh, connected with good or with harm, spoken with a mind of loving kindness or with inner hate. When others address you, their speech may be timely or untimely." It tends to get repeated, but it's fine here. When others address you, their speech may be timely or untimely. When others address you, their speech may be true or untrue. When others address you, their speech may be gentle or harsh. When others address you, their speech may be connected with good or with harm. When others address you, their speech may be spoken with a mind of loving kindness or with inner hate. Herein, monks, you should train thus. So he's saying basically, regardless of the conditions, monks, our minds will remain unaffected, and we shall utter no evil words. We shall abide compassionate for their welfare. with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. We shall abide pervading that person with a mind imbued with loving kindness, and starting with him, we shall abide pervading the all-encompassing world with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. This is how you should train, monks. So he's kind of laying it on the line. There. He says, regardless. He's given us a big order here. To abide in a mind of loving kindness when things don't seem very nice, soft, and friendly. No fun. But where do we take refuge in our mind and our heart then? Okay? And as we all know, sometimes in this human realm, this is where we have to train. People are not getting along, or seemingly getting along, or at odds. Okay? So I think it takes real courage to remain upright, compassionate, and kind when that's not what seems to be coming at you. But he says this is what you do when those things happen. He doesn't say, but there's this exception, or there's this exception, This is what he tells you to do. Now, whether or not we want to take the teaching and make it part of our life, that's up to us. He never forced anything on people. But sometimes he was very direct in what he prescribed, what medicine he prescribed for suffering. And no one said training is going to be easy. I mean, if they did, I don't think that we've done it here. No one ever told me that. They might have more easy moments, and I'm grateful for that. And the things that can sustain our equanimity, we can sustain our equanimity regardless of circumstances. And that's kind of where we're trying to head to in training, to sustain equanimity, which is a place that is very cool in the sense of not overheated. And I think this is the real training. Okay, so I couldn't resist this because I have this, some reason I keep this in my lecture folder here. So this is an old Tibetan saying that was found on the wall of a monastery somewhere. And it goes like this: once life's little cares annoyed me, when life's little cares were few, and one fly in the ointment put me in a dreadful stew. But life's stern troubles taught me each little good to prize. I now rejoice to find some ointment in my little jar of flies. I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you very much.